When you stop being available, not out of bitterness, not out of pride, but out of self-respect, the world leans in and listens. You see, there is a quiet power in choosing yourself after a lifetime of choosing everyone else. For too long, you answered every call. You showed up when your heart was tired. You poured from an empty cup and called it love, called it loyalty, called it being a good person. But let me tell you something plain and true. Being constantly available does not make you valuable. It only teaches people that your time, your energy, and your spirit can be taken without cost. The moment you stop over-explaining, stop over-giving, stop bending until you break, everything begins to shift. Because boundaries are not walls, they are doors, and you get to decide who is worthy of walking through them. When you stop being available, people notice the silence where your presence used to be. They feel the absence of your yes. They recognize the weight of what they once took for granted. Some will be confused. Some will be uncomfortable. Some will be angry. Let them. Self-respect is not loud. It does not stomp its feet or announce its arrival with fanfare. It enters the room quietly, like morning light slipping through a cracked window, and yet everything becomes visible once it is there. When you begin to respect yourself truly and deeply, the world rearranges itself in response. Not because you demanded it, but because your spirit has finally remembered its weight. There was a time when you believed love meant endurance. You believed kindness required self-erasure. You thought strength was measured by how much you could tolerate, how often you could say yes while your heart whispered no. You learned, as many do, to smile while shrinking, to serve while starving, to show up while disappearing. And the world, seeing no resistance, accepted the offering without question. But self-respect awakens something ancient inside you. It stirs the part of your soul that knows you were not born to be used up like a matchstick struck again and again for someone else's warmth. You were born with a fire meant to last, and when you finally decide to tend to that fire instead of offering it away, people notice the change. You stop explaining yourself in long, apologetic sentences. You stop justifying your needs as if they are crimes. You stop reaching out first to those who have grown comfortable reaching past you. And in that pause, in that sacred pause, the truth rises to the surface. People begin to treat you according to how you treat yourself. Some will step closer with new eyes. They will hear firmness in your voice where softness once lived, and instead of recoiling, they will respect it. They will learn your boundaries not as punishments but as guides. These are the ones who are waiting for you to arrive fully, waiting for you to stand upright in your own life. Others will resist. They will say you've changed, as if growth were a betrayal. They will miss the version of you that required nothing, asked nothing, demanded nothing, not because that version was happier, but because that version was easier. Self-respect exposes convenience, and not everyone survives the exposure. You see, when you honor yourself, you stop negotiating your dignity. You no longer accept crumbs while calling it a feast. You no longer stay silent in rooms where your spirit is being diminished, and the world accustomed to your compliance must now adjust to your clarity. This is not arrogance, this is remembrance. You remember that your time is a non-renewable resource. You remember that your emotions are not public property. You remember that love without reciprocity is not love, but labor. And once you remember these truths, you move differently. You listen more closely to your inner voice than to outside applause. You choose peace over performance. You choose alignment over approval. Self-respect teaches people how to approach you. It sets the tone without raising the volume. It says, I know who I am, and lets the silence do the rest. People respond not to your words, but to your posture, your pauses, your willingness to walk away when something cost you your soul. And something remarkable happens when you stop chasing validation. You become magnetic. Not to everyone, but to the right ones. Those who value depth over access. Those who understand that your presence is not guaranteed, but gifted. They show up with intention because they know you will not wait forever in the doorway of their indecision. The world has always known how to treat people who treat themselves well. It leans into confidence that is rooted, not performative. It honors strength that does not beg. When you respect yourself, you are no longer asking to be chosen. You are choosing. There is grief in this awakening. Let us be honest. You will mourn the years you spent overextending. You will feel the ache of relationships that could not survive your self-respect. You will question yourself in quiet moments, wondering if you have become too much, too distant, too firm. But stay there long enough, and you will realize you were never too much. You were simply too available to too little. Self-respect does not harden you. It refines you. It teaches you to be tender without being fragile, open without being unguarded, loving without being lost. It allows you to give from abundance instead of obligation. And when you walk into the world with that kind of reverence for yourself, the world responds in kind. It may take time, it may take distance, it may take letting go. But eventually the treatment you receive begins to mirror the truth you finally embraced. You are worthy, not because of what you give, not because of what you endure, but because you are here, whole, breathing, becoming. And once you know that, truly know it, nothing and no one can treat you any other way. There is a quiet misunderstanding in this world about boundaries. Many have been taught to believe that when you draw a line, you are pushing people away, that when you say no, you are choosing isolation over love. But the truth is softer and stronger than that. Boundaries are not acts of rejection, they are acts of protection. They are the way the soul says, I intend to stay. For too long, you may have worn your openness like an open door in a storm, letting everything rush in, noise, need, expectation, pain, until the rooms of your spirit were flooded and heavy. You called it generosity. You called it compassion. You called it being understanding. And while those things are beautiful, they were never meant to come at the cost of your wholeness. A boundary is not a weapon. It does not strike or wound. It stands. It stands between what nourishes you and what drains you. It stands between love and obligation. It stands between care and sacrifice. When you begin to understand this, the guilt that once followed your no begins to loosen its grip. You learn that saying no is not cruelty. It is clarity. It tells the truth without apology. It says, this is where I end, and you begin. And in that clear space, something holy happens. Relationships either rise to meet the truth, or they reveal what they were never meant to be. Boundaries teach others how to love you well. Without them, people guess. They take. They assume. Not always with malice, but often with habit. When there is no fence around a garden, every footstep feels permitted. When you place the fence, you are not denying beauty, you are preserving it. And yes, some will push against your boundaries. They will test them like waves against a shore. They will call you difficult, distant, changed. Let them speak. Resistance does not mean your boundary is wrong. It means it is working. It means you have interrupted a pattern that once benefited others more than it protected you. There is a particular fear that rises when you begin to set boundaries, the fear of abandonment. You worry that love will leave if you stop overgiving. You worry that connection will fade if you stop bending. But love that requires your self-erasure is not love. It is control wearing a tender mask. True love does not demand that you disappear to be accepted. When you protect your time, your energy, your emotional space, you are making room for sincerity. You are choosing quality over quantity. You are choosing depth over chaos. Boundaries create the conditions where trust can grow because both people know where the edges are. You do not owe anyone unlimited access to your inner world. Your softness is sacred. Your vulnerability is not a public resource. And when you learn to guard these things with intention, you discover that you can be open without being exposed. There will be moments when you tremble after saying no. Moments when your voice shakes, when your hands feel heavy, when the old instinct to apologize rises in your throat. Be gentle with yourself then. You are unlearning a lifetime of survival. You are teaching your nervous system that safety can exist without self-sacrifice. Boundaries are how you stay kind without becoming resentful. They are how you stay giving without becoming depleted. They are how you stay connected without losing yourself. Without them, bitterness quietly takes root and love turns sour. With them, affection remains clean and honest. As you grow more comfortable protecting your peace, you will notice a change in how you move through the world. You listen more closely to your body. You rest without justification. You choose your words with care, not to please, but to be true. You stop explaining why you need space. You simply take it. And the people who belong in your life will not punish you for this. They will respect it. They will feel safer knowing the rules of engagement. They will trust your yes because they have learned that you honor your no. Boundaries do not close your heart. They teach it discernment. They remind you that love is not proven through suffering. Love is proven through presence, respect, and mutual care. So let your boundaries be firm and your spirit remain soft. Let your no be clean and your yes be wholehearted. You are not here to be everything to everyone. You are here to be true to yourself and loving in ways that do not leave you empty. And in protecting yourself, you do not lose connection. You deepen it, because what is protected is preserved, and what is preserved has the chance to grow, to breathe, and to last. There is a lesson many learn too late. Not because it is hidden, but because it is uncomfortable to face when you are always available. People do not learn to cherish you, they learn to use you. Not always with cruelty, not always with intention, but with a quiet entitlement that grows wherever there are no limits. Availability, when it has no boundaries, teaches the world a dangerous rhythm. It says you will answer no matter the hour. It says you will give even when you are tired. It says you will stay even when you are unseen. And the world, ever observant, adjusts itself accordingly. You may have believed that showing up endlessly would inspire gratitude. You thought loyalty would be met with loyalty, care with care. But too often what it creates instead is dependence without respect. Because when something is always within reach, its value is rarely questioned. You became the one who listens without being heard. The one who fixes without being supported. The one who understands without being understood. And slowly, subtly, your availability stopped being appreciated and started being expected. What was once a gift became a guarantee. This is how misuse is born, not in malice, but in repetition. People do not misuse you because you are weak. They do it because you are capable, because you are compassionate, because you make things easier. But ease, when it costs you your peace, is too expensive a price to pay. When you never say no, others never learn where the line is. When you never pause, others never learn to wait. When you never withdraw, others never learn what your presence truly means. Unlimited access teaches people that you will always adjust, always accommodate, always absorb. And in that pattern, something sacred is lost. You begin to feel the quiet ache of being needed but not valued. You sense the imbalance but struggle to name it. You feel tired in ways sleep cannot fix. You wonder why love feels heavy instead of light, why connection feels draining instead of nourishing. It is because constant availability turns love into labor. You start performing instead of relating. You anticipate needs before they are spoken. You manage emotions that are not yours to carry. And the more you give, the more is taken, not because people are cruel, but because you taught them there was no cost. But the soul knows when it is being overdrawn. It whispers first, then it protests, then it retreats. That exhaustion you feel is not weakness, it is wisdom asking you to stop abandoning yourself. The moment you pull back, even slightly, the truth reveals itself. Some people reach out with curiosity and care. Others react with confusion or offense. Not because you have done something wrong, but because the rules have changed. You are no longer endlessly accessible, and that unsettles those who built comfort on your availability. This is the moment many retreat out of fear. They rush back to old patterns, apologize for having needs, reopen doors they meant to close. But growth lives on the other side of discomfort. Stay there. Let the silence speak. Let the pause teach. Because when you stop being constantly available, You are not becoming distant, you are becoming intentional. You are teaching people that your time matters, that your energy is finite, that your presence is not an obligation but an offering. And offerings, when given freely and not demanded, regain their meaning. Some relationships will recalibrate. They will learn to ask instead of assume, to give instead of take, to meet you halfway. These are the connections that were always capable of depth but needed structure to find it. Others will fade, not because you failed them, but because they were attached to what you provided, not who you are. Let them go without bitterness. They were part of your survival, not your becoming. Constant availability blurs identity. You become who others need instead of who you are. Pulling back allows you to hear your own voice again. It allows your yes to be sincere and your no to be respected. You begin to notice how much lighter your spirit feels when you are not always on call. How peace returns when you choose rest without explanation. How joy surfaces when giving is mutual, not one-sided. Availability, when chosen consciously, is beautiful. But availability without boundaries is a slow erosion of self. It teaches the world that you will always move yourself aside. And eventually you begin to believe it too. So reclaim your time, reclaim your pauses, reclaim the right to be unreachable sometimes. You are not meant to be endlessly accessible. You are meant to be present where it matters. And here is the quiet miracle. When you stop being constantly available, the people who truly value you step forward with intention. They treat your presence like something earned, not assumed. And in that shift, you are no longer misused. You are met, not drained, but respected. Not consumed, but considered. Not taken for granted, but held with care. There comes a moment in every life when the soul stands at a crossroads. Though nothing on the outside may appear to change, it is the moment you decide to grow. Not loudly, not dramatically, but inwardly, with a resolve that settles deep in the bones. And from that moment on, everything begins to sort itself. The truth emerges with clarity. The right people will rise to meet you, and the wrong ones will quietly or painfully fall away. Growth has a way of revealing motives. When you begin to honor yourself, when you stop explaining your worth and start embodying it, relationships are tested, not because you have become unloving, but because you have become honest. You are no longer willing to bend into shapes that break you, and that change unsettles those who were comfortable with your silence. The right people do not fear your evolution. They do not compete with your healing or resent your boundaries. They listen. They learn. They adjust. They understand that growth is not abandonment. It is alignment. These are the ones who meet your firmness with respect and your clarity with care. They do not ask you to return to who you were for their comfort. They celebrate who you are becoming. They notice when you speak with more certainty. They feel the difference when you no longer rush to respond. They sense that you are rooted now, not drifting. And instead of pulling away, they step closer with intention. They rise not above you, not over you, but alongside you. But the wrong ones experience your growth as a loss. They feel deprived of the version of you that made things easy for them. The one who said yes too quickly. The one who stayed quiet to keep the peace. The one who gave without asking for return. When that version disappears, they grieve not for you, but for the convenience you represented. And grief, when unexamined, often disguises itself as anger. They may accuse you of changing, as though transformation were a betrayal. They may test your boundaries, push your limits, attempt to guilt you back into old patterns, not because they want to harm you, but because your growth forces them to confront their own unwillingness to grow. Let them struggle. This is not your burden to carry. You were never meant to be a bridge. People cross without acknowledgement. You were never meant to be the ground everyone stands on while refusing to stand with you. When you stop offering yourself as a place of comfort at the cost of your own stability, some people will not know where to place their feet. That is not your failure. That is clarity. There is pain in this sorting. Let us not romanticize it. Letting go of people you once loved, people you once needed, can feel like tearing pages from a book you hoped would never end. But endings are not always tragedies. Sometimes they are truths finally spoken aloud. The right people do not disappear when you stop overgiving. They remain when you stop chasing. They stay when you no longer perform, because they were never there for the performance. They were there for the presence. They respect your no because it makes your yes meaningful. They understand your silence because they value your voice. They do not fear your independence because they do not rely on your sacrifice to feel secure. And in their presence, you do not feel the need to prove your worth. You are not exhausted by being understood. You are not anxious about being enough. You are allowed to be human, evolving, imperfect, and still loved. The wrong ones, however, will resist the loss of control. They will frame your boundaries as selfishness, your distance as coldness, your peace as indifference. They will misunderstand you loudly because understanding you would require accountability. Release them without malice. You do not need to explain your growth to those who benefited from your smallness. You do not need to convince anyone that your healing is valid. Some people are only meant to walk with you for a season. They were companions in your survival, not your becoming. Honor the role they played, but do not confuse familiarity with destiny. As you allow the wrong ones to leave, space opens. Space for relationships that breathe. Space for conversations that nourish instead of drain. Space for love that does not require self-erasure. This is the quiet miracle of discernment. As you rise, you are met. As you stand taller, you are seen more clearly. And those who cannot see you from this new height were never meant to climb with you. Trust the process. Trust the discomfort. Trust the distance. You are not losing people, you are losing illusions. And what remains is real, solid, reciprocal. The right people will rise to meet you. The wrong ones will fall away. And in that sorting, you will find not loneliness but alignment, not abandonment but freedom. There is a sacred hush that arrives when you stop reaching for everything at once. It is not emptiness. It is space. And in that space, something long neglected begins to breathe again. When you stop being available to everything and everyone, you do not shrink. You clear the ground. You make room for peace, for purpose, for the quiet unfolding of who you were always meant to be. For much of your life, you may have lived in reaction, responding to needs before they were spoken, filling gaps that were never yours to fill, carrying responsibilities that belonged to others but rested on your shoulders because you were capable, because you were kind, because you were there. And in doing so, your own life waited patiently on the sidelines. Pulling back feels unnatural at first. The silence can be unsettling. You may reach instinctively for noise, for obligation, for the familiar weight of being needed. But stay long enough to notice that peace is not boredom, it is balance. It is the nervous system exhaling after years of tension. It is the soul no longer bracing for the next demand. When you stop being available to everything, your time opens like a wide field. You begin to see where your hours have been leaking, where your energy has been scattered. You notice how often you said yes out of fear rather than desire. And with that awareness comes choice, real choice, the kind that aligns action with intention. Peace is not the absence of activity, it is the presence of alignment. It is waking up without dread. It is moving through the day without resentment. It is being able to rest without explaining why. And peace cannot survive in a life that is overcrowded with expectations that are not your own. Purpose too requires space. It cannot whisper to you over the roar of constant availability. It needs stillness. It needs attention. It needs the courage to disappoint what does not serve your becoming. When you stop being everything to everyone, you finally hear the quiet call of what is meant for you. You begin to ask different questions. Not who needs me, but what matters. Not how can I help, but is this mine to carry? These questions do not make you selfish. They make you honest. They guide you back to your center, where your gifts can be offered with intention instead of obligation. As you create space, you also create discernment. You notice which relationships feel nourishing and which feel heavy. You recognize the difference between connection and consumption. You learn that not every request deserves a response, and not every opportunity deserves your energy. In this clearing, creativity returns. Joy resurfaces in small, unexpected ways. You laugh more freely. You think more deeply. You feel less rushed and more present. Life slows, not because there is less to do, but because you are no longer doing what is not yours. There is courage in this narrowing. The courage to choose depth over breadth. The courage to focus on what is meaningful rather than what is urgent. The courage to trust that what is truly aligned will not require you to abandon yourself. Some will misunderstand the season of withdrawal. They may interpret your quiet as distance, your selectiveness as disinterest. Let them. Peace does not need permission. Purpose does not need applause. The life you are building does not require everyone's understanding. As you become less available to noise, you become more available to truth. You listen to your intuition without interruption. You feel your body's signals without ignoring them. You honor your spirit's need for rest, reflection, and renewal. And in this availability to yourself, something remarkable happens. You show up more fully where you choose to be. Your yes becomes powerful because it is rare. Your presence becomes meaningful because it is intentional. You are no longer divided, no longer stretched thin across too many commitments. This is not retreat, it is refinement. You are refining your life down to what matters. Refining your energy down to what heals. Refining your relationships down to what is reciprocal. In doing so, you are not losing anything of value. You are releasing what was never meant to stay. Peace settles into your bones. Purpose steps forward with clarity. And you realize that making room was not an act of withdrawal, but an act of devotion to your life, to your calling, to your wholeness. When you stop being available to everything, you become available to yourself. And when you are finally available to yourself, you are able to give to the world not from exhaustion, but from abundance. That is the kind of giving that lasts. That is the kind of living that feels true.